In the Heat of the Night was more than just a TV crime drama. It was a mirror to America's soul. But what if the real drama happened when the cameras stopped rolling? Behind every badge and Southern accent was a story darker than the script. Tragedy, addiction, secrets, and silent battles haunted the cast. And once you uncover what really happened, you'll never watch the show the same way again. Hugh O'Connor as Lonnie Jameson. The uniform couldn't hide the pain he carried. He wore the uniform of a rising officer in Sparta, but behind the badge, Hugh O'Connor was a man quietly unraveling. Born in Rome, raised in Hollywood's shadow, he stepped into In the Heat of the Night at just 26, playing Lonnie Jameson, a role that would define him and destroy him. Audiences saw a sincere, steady cop. But what they didn't see was a young man scarred by cancer at 16, hooked on painkillers and marijuana just to survive the treatment. The disease went away, the addiction didn't. Being the son of TV legend Carroll O'Connor only made things worse. Every success came with a whisper. He only got the role because of his father. Every failure cut twice as deep. Still, Hugh tried to build a life. He got married, had a son, smiled for the cameras, but off-screen, he was locked in a losing war with his demons. Rehab, relapse, repeat. His wife Angela stood by him, but love wasn't enough. On March 28, 1995, his third wedding anniversary, Hugh sat alone in their Pacific Palisades home. He picked up a gun and never got back up. He was only 32, a promising actor, a broken son, a quiet soul crushed by the weight of expectations and addiction. What really happened behind that closed door? And why didn't anyone stop it in time? Howard Rollins as Detective Virgil Tibbs, a brilliant mind undone by silence and secrets. Howard Rollins stepped into In the Heat of the Night like lightning in a quiet storm. As Detective Virgil Tibbs, he brought elegance, restraint, and a simmering fire that elevated every scene. At just 38, he wasn't acting. He was radiating. But behind that quiet brilliance was a man slowly breaking under invisible weight. Hollywood had promised him greatness, an Oscar nomination for Ragtime, critical acclaim for A Soldier's Story. Rollins should have soared. Instead, the pressure of being a black man in a white industry crushed him. Every slip became a scandal. Every whisper about his addiction, his private life, or his identity became tabloid fuel. Cocaine numbed the pain. Alcohol blurred the fear. He tried to hide it, but arrests stacked up, and so did the consequences. By season 6, In the Heat of the Night let him go. He fought back, achieved sobriety, took smaller roles, but years of damage lingered in his body and in his soul. Depression, isolation. The world never knew how much he was hurting. In October 1996, Rollins received a devastating diagnosis, lymphoma caused by AIDS. 6 weeks later, on December 8th, he was gone. He was just 46. No wife, no children, no fanfare. Just a man who once carried a series on his shoulders and died quietly in the dark. Why did a talent so rare burn out so fast? And why did Hollywood turn its back when he needed it most? Carroll O'Connor as Bill Gillespie. He played the chief but couldn't save his own son. When Carroll O'Connor took on the role of Chief Bill Gillespie in the Heat of the Night, he brought gravitas, grit, and moral depth. At 64, he was already a television legend, loved, feared, and typecast as Archie Bunker. But behind the commanding presence was a father fighting a battle no script could write. While audiences watched him uphold justice on screen, Carroll was waging war off-screen, against addiction, against Hollywood, and eventually against fate. His adopted son, Hugh O'Connor, was spiraling, and Carroll tried everything to pull him back. Rehab, intervention, love, threats, prayers, nothing worked. And then came the phone call, March 28, 1995. Hugh was gone. Carroll was shattered, But he didn't stay silent. Grief turned into rage. He launched a very public campaign to hold his son's drug dealer accountable, calling him a partner in murder. It wasn't just revenge. It was a father's last attempt to give his son's death meaning. Even as diabetes and heart disease drained him, Carroll kept working, kept speaking, kept fighting. Through the pain, his wife Nancy stood beside him, his last anchor in a life that had lost its center. On June 21, 2001, he died of a heart attack at 76. A hero on screen, a haunted man off it. Was justice ever truly served? Or did Carroll O'Connor die with his mission unfinished? Lois Nettleton as Joanne St. John. Hollywood forgot her, but she never stopped performing. Lois Nettleton was elegance incarnate. When she arrived on In the Heat of the Night as Councilwoman Joanne St. John, she didn't just act. She elevated the frame. Sharp-witted, poised, politically charged, her character clashed with the system, and viewers loved her for it. Off-screen, Lois carried that same quiet strength. But behind the grace was a woman slowly being erased. She had once dazzled Broadway, earned an Emmy, starred in The Twilight Zone, A Streetcar Named Desire, Profiles in Courage. She was the real deal. But Hollywood has no patience for women past a certain age, even legends. Roles dried up. Scripts stopped coming. The phone grew silent. She never remarried after divorcing writer Jean Shepherd in 1967. She had no children, just an apartment full of theater memorabilia and memories fading faster than her health. Decades of smoking caught up to her. Lung cancer settled in quietly, and she didn't tell anyone. She kept showing up to events, kept smiling through the pain. But behind closed doors, she was shrinking, losing weight, strength, hope. On January 18, 2008, at age 80, Lois Nettleton died in Woodland Hills. Alone, elegant, and largely forgotten by the town she once lit up. How does a woman who gave so much end up so invisible? And why does Hollywood abandon its queens when the lights dim? Carl Weathers as Chief Hampton Forbes. Hollywood gave him muscles, but not mercy. By the time Carl Weathers walked into In the Heat of the Night as Chief Hampton Forbes, he was already a cinematic icon. Apollo Creed, Predator, Action Jackson. He didn't just play tough, he was tough. But the man behind the muscle was quietly battling something no camera could capture, the loneliness of being boxed in. Hollywood saw his physique, but rarely his depth. Roles became repetitive, and so did the frustration. For Carl, joining Heat in 1993 wasn't just another gig. It was a rare chance to lead with authority, not fists. Off-screen, the battles continued. 3 marriages, 3 divorces, 2 beloved sons caught in the storm. The spotlight that once empowered him began to flicker. Behind closed doors, he worried. Was the body that made him famous now betraying him? He kept moving, kept acting, kept directing. But time, as it always does, caught up. On February 1, 2024, Carl Weathers died in his Los Angeles home. Cause atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, the same heart that powered Apollo Creed had finally given out. He was 76. His ashes were scattered, but his legacy exploded again. The Mandalorian, a posthumous Hollywood Walk of Fame star, and a generation that finally saw more than just muscle. Was Carl ever truly seen for the actor he was, or just the fighter we wanted him to be? Pat Hingle as Judge Roy Eversole. He passed judgment on screen, but carried pain no one could sentence. When Pat Hingle appeared on In the Heat of the Night as Judge Roy Eversole, he brought more than authority. He brought lived-in wisdom. His stare could silence a courtroom. His voice could sway a jury. But behind the robe and righteous lines was a man who had survived something few ever do and never forgot. In 1959, at the height of his career, Hingle stepped into an elevator and fell nearly 30 feet down the shaft. He shattered his body, a leg broken in 3 places, crushed ribs, lost a finger. He was supposed to star in Elmer Gantry, a career-making role. It went to Burt Lancaster instead. Hingle never complained, but the pain never left. Every step on screen came with a wince beneath the surface. Every role, from Batman's Commissioner Gordon to Southern Patriarchs, was layered with quiet agony. His first marriage collapsed under the weight of his recovery. Though he remarried, those closest to him knew something inside Pat had changed that day in the shaft. He was never quite whole again. In 2008, doctors discovered myelodysplastic syndrome, an aggressive cancer of the bone marrow. He battled it with dignity, but the fight didn't last long. On January 3, 2009, Pat Hingle died at 84, his ashes scattered into the Atlantic Ocean. Chuck Hicks as Red Jack. He took the punches for Hollywood, but no one noticed the damage. Chuck Hicks didn't need a stunt double. He was the stunt. When he stepped into In the Heat of the Night as Red Jack, the muscle-bound enforcer with menace in his eyes, it wasn't acting. It was lived experience. A former boxer, football player, and lifelong stuntman, Hicks brought a raw physicality that made scenes pop. But all that grit came at a brutal cost. He took the hits, literally, for decades. In Cool Hand Luke, Every Which Way But Loose, and Dick Tracy, Hicks fell off buildings, brawled with stars, and crashed through Hollywood's toughest scenes. No pads, no CGI, just bone, muscle, and pure toughness. But the bruises didn't fade. The cracked ribs, torn ligaments, and dozens of concussions never fully healed. The pain stayed, and so did the bottle. Alcohol dulled the damage but fractured his career. Directors stopped calling, roles got smaller. The tough guy was aging, and the industry doesn't wait. Still, Hicks never left the business he bled for. Even as the cameras forgot him, he kept showing up. For the love, for the pride, for the fight. In 2020, a stroke hit. He never fully recovered. On May 4th, 2021, Chuck Hicks died in Las Vegas at 93 years old. A warrior in every sense, gone quietly. He gave his body to Hollywood. But when it broke, did anyone remember the man behind the bruises? Fran Bennett as Ruta Gibson, she commanded every room, but no one saw the loneliness she carried home. Fran Bennett didn't need many scenes to make an impact. As Ruta Gibson in the Heat of the Night, she embodied quiet power, unshakable, intelligent, and composed. She played the kind of woman who never flinched, even in the face of chaos. And in many ways, that's exactly who Fran was in real life, until the silence became too loud. An acclaimed stage actress and veteran of Quantum Leap, Sunset Beach, and Scandal, Fran gave her life to the craft. She shattered boundaries in Shakespearean roles, even taking on a groundbreaking female King Lear. But the stage that once embraced her became a lonelier place with each passing decade. Behind the strength was a woman worn down by heartbreak. Her marriages were brief, her friendships strained by distance and time. She poured everything into performance, leaving little room for herself. When the COVID-19 pandemic struck, it didn't just steal work. It stole her world. The theaters closed, the classrooms emptied, the lights went out, and with them, so did her sense of purpose. She passed quietly on September 12, 2021, in Los Angeles. No dramatic ending, just a slow fading out, possibly linked to complications from COVID-19. She was 84, dignified to the end. Why do the strongest women suffer in silence? And what happens when the applause finally stops for good? Mel Stewart as Calvin Peterson. He played the calmest man in the room while chaos consumed him in silence. Mel Stewart didn't need to raise his voice. As Calvin Peterson in the Heat of the Night, He brought balance, clarity, and a steady presence that often calmed the storm inside Sparta's police department. But behind that composed exterior, Mel was fighting his own storm and losing quietly. He had a rich career, acclaimed roles in All in the Family, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, and an Emmy nomination for his powerful performances. But the applause never silenced the noise in his own life. Alcohol became his shadow. It crept into his marriage, widened cracks in his family, and eventually tore it apart. His relationship with his child became strained, complicated by guilt, pride, and years of missed chances. Still, he kept working, teaching acting in San Francisco, trying to pass on what Hollywood so often failed to appreciate: craft over fame, truth over image. But even there, friends noticed, his spark was fading. And then came something darker: Alzheimer's. The man once filled with music, poetry, and fierce clarity slowly unraveled. He began to forget names, then roles, then people, until eventually, even himself. On February 24, 2002, Mel Stewart died at 72 from complications of Alzheimer's. His voice, once so steady, was gone. What happens when a brilliant mind begins to forget it ever was? And who remembers the actors who can no longer remember themselves? Alan Autry as Captain Bubba Skinner. He wore the badge on screen but fought his darkest battles off it. Alan Autry was unforgettable as Captain Bubba Skinner, the towering officer with a steel jaw, steady loyalty, and eyes that had clearly seen too much. Fans saw strength, control, conviction. But the man behind the badge? He was once broken, buried deep in addiction, and nearly lost forever. Long before, in the heat of the night, Alan wasn't chasing criminals. He was running from himself. A promising quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, his NFL dream crashed and burned before it ever took flight. The fallout was brutal. Alcohol, drugs, years spent numb, drifting through broken jobs and broken promises. But in 1979, he made a choice few addicts live long enough to make. He got clean. That decision didn't just save his life, it gave him a second one. Hollywood came next. Southern Comfort, Popeye, and finally the role that would define his redemption: Bubba Skinner. And when the series ended, Alan did the unthinkable. He walked away from the spotlight, entered politics, won 2 terms as mayor of Fresno, reinvented himself again. But public office came with new demons: pressure, loneliness, scrutiny, and yet he endured. Today, in 2025, Alan Autry is 73. He lives quietly in California, occasionally speaks at Christian conferences, produces faith-based films, a survivor, a reinvented man. David Hart as Officer Parker Williams. The kindest man in Sparta quietly walked away from the spotlight. David Hart brought warmth to In the Heat of the Night in a way no one else could. As Officer Parker Williams, he wasn't the strongest or the boldest, but he was the heart. Gentle, a little awkward, fiercely loyal, Parker was the man everyone trusted. And yet, when the cameras stopped rolling, David made a decision that stunned everyone. He walked away. After years of chasing roles, Silver Bullet, The Island, national commercials, theater gigs, David finally found steady ground with Heat. But even then, the reality of being a working actor never let up. Jobs were inconsistent, fame was fleeting, and supporting a family while riding Hollywood's emotional roller coaster took its toll. So when the series ended in 1995, he didn't chase another show. He didn't cling to auditions or hunt for comeback roles. Instead, he disappeared, by choice. He moved to rural Georgia, raised his family, found peace in anonymity. Occasionally, he'd reappear for a fan reunion, offering a smile, a memory, a handshake. But mostly, he chose quiet over fame. No scandals, no headlines. Just a man who gave everything to one great role and then chose life over limelight. As of 2025, David Hart is 71, surrounded by children and grandchildren. A gentle legacy, still intact. Why do some actors burn out chasing stardom, while others find freedom in simply letting go? Crystal Fox as Sergeant Luann Corbin. She fought her way into Hollywood, but the war never really ended. Crystal Fox joined in the heat of the night at just 26 years old, stepping into the role of Luann Corbin, a sharp, driven officer who rose from rookie to trusted investigator. She didn't just hold her own in a male-dominated cast, she commanded the screen. But behind that strength was a young black actress fighting a brutal, invisible war. Hollywood in the early 90s wasn't made for women like her. Every audition came with unspoken rules. Be tough, but not too tough. Be beautiful, but not threatening. Be perfect, because you won't get a second chance. She felt the pressure in every casting room, every sideways glance, every lost role she should have landed. So she turned to where she was valued, the stage. For colored girls, fences, a raisin in the sun. Critics praised her, audiences loved her, but the paychecks rarely matched the praise. Years passed. She kept working, always on the edge of a breakthrough, until finally it came. Tyler Perry cast her in The Haves and The Have-Nots. Then came Big Little Lies, then A Fall from Grace. After decades of being overlooked, she was undeniable. As of 2025, Crystal Fox is 61, still acting, still rising, still proving them all wrong.